Hello, everybody. It's the old bear from the Old Bear's Den of Bigfoot. And today we got you a video of an encounter that comes out of the state of Georgia. Now, this involves a bow hunter, and this happened back at the beginning of November. Now, his hunting area that he likes, it's really thick in there, and he likes going in there around the 1st of November because evidently that's where all the big bucks go and hide, or they take the does in and hide. And well, it's mating season for them at this time. Let me get that piece of wood out of the way. Anyways, the gentleman goes hunting. It's a Saturday morning, and on Saturday morning he's in there. It's the, when was it, November 5th or 6th?
He said it was the first part of November, so I'm not sure.
I think it was the first
date.
weekend of November, so I can't remember when that was. It may have been the 3rd or 2nd, because November 5th was voting. So yeah, it was the 3rd of November. And like I said, he likes going in there because the bigger bucks in that area is where he's after. And the man's an avid bow hunter. I mean, he's said he would rather bow hunt than he would do any other kind of hunting.
Let's stop for a second.
What?
Just go ahead.
The director is distracting me.
You want distractions? I can distract you.
Anyways.
Excuse me. Hi, everybody.
And of course, that's Mrs. Bear. So, and her new nickname is
Barbie Bear.
There you go. Anyway, let's get back to the encounter, honey.
Okay.
So he gets in there on that Saturday morning before daylight. He gets there. When he got there early in the morning, now normally he said when he's gone in there, there's usually one, maybe two other trucks. And they usually hunt on the public land that's in there on the other side of the road because it's more open. He likes to hunt in those thick areas, and that's just the way the man hunts. And I get it. That is typically where bigger bucks go into and hide and stay away from us hunters and stuff like that. But anyway, he goes in. He's got a climbing stand because on public ground in the state of Georgia, you cannot put up a fixed stand when it's public hunting grounds. You have to bring in a climber or bring in the portable steps that do not screw into the tree but lash onto the tree. They don't screw in, they don't damage the trees in any way, shape, or form. And so anyway, he gets in there, he gets all set up, and he said probably no more than 10-15 minutes before it got light enough and legal time to be able to hunt, to shoot a deer, he heard a very strange sound. And he said, I just kind of blew it off on the first time that it did it, but then it done it 2 or 3 more times. And he said, it's not the bird that I'm thinking it is. He's thinking it's a screech owl or a barred owl or something. But the sound, he said, just sounded like it was all one note. Never left according to him, it never left the baritone stage. Owls don't do calls in the baritone level. They're more of the mid-range or to the high range, to the upper end sometimes. Just depends on which one it is. And at that point in time, he then goes and, he's sitting in his climber. He's all set up to bow hunt. Those sounds, they kind of unnerved him a little bit, but about 5 minutes before shooting light, he was sitting in his tree stand, just about forgotten about the calls. He heard heavy footsteps. Now, he's thinking this might be a deer, which he's there to deer hunt, so no big deal. So at that point, he looks, he's looking in the direction, trying to get a peek at what's coming. It's still too dark. He really can't pick out anything because it's just too dark. And the sound stops. He said the sound stopped probably 50 yards away from him. And he never heard nothing else. The walking stop. He thought, well, if it was a deer, it laid down. Maybe it'll get back up and come and show itself. So at that point, he's sitting there in his stand and he's waiting on daylight. Daylight arrives. He hears a few chipmunks running around, and he looks and makes sure they're chipmunks. And all of a sudden, around half an hour after daylight, the woods go completely silent. He finds this very strange because usually the woods are never silent when he's in there. But the woods went silent. No birds, no chipmunks playing anymore, no squirrels barking. It kind of set him on edge a little bit. So at that point, he goes, he's got his bow hung up, and he's got his little backpack that he takes with him, which he carries on an arm, across his arm, because the tree stands on his back. And he's in there probably half a mile, quarter of a mile, something like that. I can't remember which it was. I think it was closer to a quarter of a mile. And he starts hearing, and he's watching to his left, which is his back trail, because that's where most of the deer come, is when them other guys are across the road. They run them out of there over to him, and he's watching that way. Well, he's sitting in a tree and he hears heavy breathing. I know that was a lousy attempt to imitate it, but please forgive me. I'm not the best in the world at heavy breathing. Anyways, he's sitting there and he kind of slowly turns, and he's looking down the path. Now, it's a walking trail, but it's grown up over the years, and they don't keep it very clean. And he's looking down that walking path, and he sees something standing there, leaning out from one of the big oaks that's on down that path. Probably about 50 or 60 yards from him. And at this point, he's like, where the heck did that guy come from? Because it looks like a human being. Bigfoot's never crossed his mind. So he's looking at it, and he's looking at it, and he's like, what the heck is this guy doing? And it's just standing there heavy breathing, and he can hear it. So at that point, he's like, what the heck is going on? Where'd this guy come from? This weirdo. Well, this weirdo starts towards him. It steps completely out from behind the tree and just it takes an immense step. And he's looking and he's like, that's not a human. Oops. Now he's thinking, should I jump out of my tree and run for it? Well, if I jump out, I'll break my knee or break my ankle or something. And he's like, this thing's only 45, 50 yards away. How long would it take after seeing that big, huge step that it took? How long would it take to cover that kind of ground? So he just decides to sit there. And this thing keeps coming, keeps walking. It's still taking those, the heavy breathing that they do. And it gets closer and closer and closer and closer. So finally it gets about 10, 12 feet away from him. It stops, curls its lips, bares its teeth, and starts growling. Well, this kind of makes him on hyper alert. He then picks his bow up, nocks an arrow, and this thing's standing there watching him, just growling at him about every other breath. And at that point, he's thinking he's done for. This thing can rip him out of the tree as big as it is. It's somewhere around 9 feet. This thing can reach up and grab him and just yank him completely out of the tree. Rip him in half and go do whatever he wanted to, using his head as a bowling ball, he thought. So now this Bigfoot's standing there growling. Finally it drops its lips back, quits growling at him, and then just trying to get him to move. I don't know if this Bigfoot thought he was part of that tree or if the tree was his legs. I don't know, because he said it was acting weird. And said it just took a couple steps to the right and was off the trail. And said he watched it make a big semicircle around him. And he was standing in his tree stand at this point with his bow and arrow nocked and everything, thinking that he may have to shoot this thing. 8.5, 9 foot tall is what the man said. Could have been a 10-footer. He wasn't for sure. He's not real good at judging height. And he said the thing just walked a complete circle, finally started walking again, and did a complete circle back to the trail, the walking trail, and walked up the trail to where it first appeared, and stepped over behind that big tree, and he heard it walking off. Never ran. It just walked off behind that tree and kept the tree between him and it. And he said after he heard the walking, got real faint, he started climbing down the tree. He lowered he didn't dare lower his bow, but he turned around and got down out of the tree. It's one of the stand-up, sit-down tree stands where you stand up, move the top part down, and then sit down and then move the foot section down. And he said, I've done that pretty quick. And he said, a couple times I slid a few feet going down the tree. That's how fast he was going. He wasn't getting a good enough bite on the tree so once he got down, he grabbed up his tree stand, took it apart, And the whole time he had his bow sitting there against a tree within arm's reach of him, and still had an arrow knocked. He grabbed his stuff up, put the tree stand kind of loosely together. He just had straps that he attached the bottom to the top, and put it on his back, and started out there. And the last bit, but to get up to the little parking area, was a decent sized bank. He said probably 60, 70 feet long. And said something told him to turn around at this point. Now, he's got his bow in one hand, the little backpack, he said it probably wasn't much bigger than that. In the other hand, he's got his tree stand strapped to his back. It's got shoulder harnesses on it. So he turned around, and the creature was standing there in the trail behind him. Never made a bit of noise, never heard it walk up. And it's standing there, and it starts growling at him again. He said at this point, I jerked that tree stand off my back, flung it up the trail. And he said, I held onto my bow, and he said, I took off at a dead run for my truck, thinking this thing was going to get me. And when I took off running, it took a couple, he said, it must have taken some big steps, because I stopped halfway up the hill and turned around and looked, and now this thing's at the bottom of the hill. So he's roughly 35 feet away from this creature. And at this point, he discards his bow. And he's scared to death. He makes it to his truck. He drives out of there like a madman. Now, when he left, there was no other vehicles in there. And usually, like I said earlier, there's one or two trucks there. And when them guys go across the road to hunt, they run deer to him, and usually it's nice bucks or something of that nature, or he sees a bunch of does, and so on and so forth. Now, I want you to remember that for a reason. That's a very pertinent part of this story, this encounter. So at that point, he then, he drives home. He runs into his house. He tells his wife everything that happened to him. And she's like, you're crazy. And he's like, no, honey, I'm serious. And she starts asking, well, where's your bow? Where's your tree stand? Where's your stuff? And he's like, it's back there in the woods with that thing. I ain't going back for it. So after a few minutes of questioning him, she starts to figure out something really bad happened. So she calls friends of the family, his buddies, and they come over and they talk him into going back. Well, they get back over there. There's 4 guys there with him. One of his buddies rode with him, and the other 3 rode in one of the other buddies' pickups. So at that point, they go over the hill. Well, they come upon the bow. Now, I don't know if this Bigfoot done it or not, but the bow is unstrung. It's like it stomped it. It bent the metal riser on the bow. And the riser is what the limbs are of the bow are attached to, and the string sits on pulleys on the limbs, and that's how you make a compound bow. Most of you know this. So at that point, they're like, something happened. And they go over, he slipped the tree stand off at the bottom of the hill. And they start down the hill, and about 10 feet up the hill, they find the tree stand slung over in the brush. They pull it out, and it looks bad. It's like this thing got mad and stomped the freaking tree stand flat. And they're like, well, you're going to need a new tree stand. And they go down there to where he said this thing was standing, and they find a footprint. The footprint was somewhere around 18, 19 inches long. Could have been 20 inches. They weren't for sure where the heel ended when they measured it. And the way they measured it, they took one of the arrows that had a broadhead on it and measured it, and they took it back and measured the broadhead, the cut that they made on the broadhead, or on the arrow shaft itself. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have all the pertinent information, and I have a question for you all. Do you think that Bigfoot was upset because it may have thought that he should have been on the other side of the road running deer into it? Or was that Bigfoot upset because he was on his side of the road? So, answer that question for me. And I hope y'all enjoy this. And this is the Old Bear signing off. Bye.
Hi everybody, I forgot to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Y'all enjoy your time with your family and enjoy the great food I know you're going to eat, and y'all have a wonderfully blessed, happy Thanksgiving. Bye bye.